What if the most dangerous weapon in one of the world's most important waterways is not a missile, not a warship, and not a submarine, but a fleet of small boats that cost a fraction of what it is designed to challenge? For decades, military power has been measured by size. The largest aircraft carriers, the most advanced fighter jets, the most expensive weapons systems ever built. But deep inside one narrow stretch of water between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula, a different idea of warfare has been developing. A place where a small boat moving at high speed can force a billion-dollar warship to slow down. A place where uncertainty itself becomes a weapon. This is the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow passage that looks almost insignificant on a map, a thin blue line connecting the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. But beneath that simple image is one of the most strategically important pieces of geography on Earth. Because every day, energy, trade, and military power move through this corridor. And the question facing every commander watching this waterway is not simply, who has the biggest navy? The real question is, what happens when the battlefield is designed to make size become a weakness? On a satellite image, the Strait of Hormuz does not look like a battlefield. There are no trenches, no front lines, no massive armies facing each other. Just ships moving through water, tankers carrying energy, cargo vessels carrying goods, naval forces watching from a distance. But the part most people miss is that modern warfare does not always begin with an explosion. Sometimes it begins with hesitation. A captain looking at a radar screen, a commander deciding whether an approaching vessel is a threat, a shipping company calculating whether sending a tanker through a narrow waterway is worth the risk. The weapon is not always what destroys something. Sometimes the weapon is the uncertainty created before anything happens. And this is where the story of Iran's fast boat strategy begins. The boats themselves are not impressive in the traditional sense. They are small, lightly built, designed for speed rather than endurance. Compared with an American destroyer or aircraft carrier, they appear almost insignificant. A single fast attack boat against a modern naval vessel is not a fair fight. The difference in sensors, weapons, armor, and technology is enormous. But that comparison misses the entire purpose. Iran never designed these vessels to win a conventional naval battle, because Iran knows it cannot match the United States ship for ship. Instead, the strategy is based on a different calculation. If one boat is easy to defeat, what happens when there are dozens? What happens when they approach from multiple directions? What happens when the defender must identify, track, and decide against many targets at the same time? This is the logic behind what analysts often call the swarm concept. The goal is not to overpower an enemy. The goal is to create more problems than the enemy can solve quickly. The lesson here is bigger than Iran. It represents a transformation happening across modern war. For much of history, powerful militaries relied on concentration. The strongest force gathered the biggest weapons in one place. The larger fleet controlled the sea. The larger army controlled the battlefield. But modern technology has changed the equation. Cheap drones can threaten expensive aircraft. Cyber attacks can disrupt infrastructure without firing a single shot. Small missiles can force large ships to rethink their movements. The battlefield has become a contest between cost and complexity, and that creates a dangerous contradiction. The United States may possess the most advanced navy in the world, but advanced systems are also complicated systems. And complicated systems create new vulnerabilities. To understand why the Strait of Hormuz matters, the camera has to move away from the boats. It has to move upward above the water, above the ships, to a satellite view of the entire region. From space, the geography becomes obvious. The Persian Gulf is almost like a giant enclosed sea, and the Strait of Hormuz is the exit. At its narrowest point, the passage is only roughly 21 nautical miles wide. That means a relatively small geographic area connects one of the world's most important energy regions with global markets. A disruption here does not remain local. It travels. A delay in the Gulf becomes a price increase in Asia. A security concern becomes an insurance problem in Europe. A military confrontation becomes an economic issue everywhere. This changes everything. Because controlling this waterway is not only about controlling ships, it is about controlling confidence. But here is the problem. A country does not need to permanently close a waterway to create strategic pressure. It only needs to make people believe the waterway may become dangerous. That distinction is critical. A physical blockade is obvious. A psychological blockade is much harder to measure. A tanker company does not need to see missiles flying overhead before making a decision. It only needs to ask, what happens if something goes wrong? And that question alone can change behavior. Ships may slow down, routes may change, costs may rise, markets may react. The battlefield expands from the ocean into the global economy. This is why the fast boat strategy matters. Because the boats are not the entire weapon, they are a symbol of a larger strategy. A strategy designed around attacking the weaknesses of a stronger opponent. The United States built a navy optimized for global power projection. Aircraft carriers, long-range aircraft, advanced sensors, missile defenses, a fleet designed to operate thousands of miles away from American shores. Iran built something different. A network designed around geography, short distances, coastal positions, fast-moving platforms, weapons that are cheap enough to replace. The two sides are not playing the same game, and that is the first contradiction at the center of this story. The United States is trying to maintain control. Iran is trying to make control impossible. But the history of this confrontation did not begin with small boats appearing in the water. The boats are only the visible layer. The deeper conflict developed over decades. After the 1979 Iranian Revolution, relations between Tehran and Washington collapsed. The Persian Gulf became a major arena of competition. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, the region saw how vulnerable energy routes could become when military conflict reached the sea. The so-called tanker war demonstrated a crucial reality. You do not need to defeat every ship to affect global commerce. You only need to create enough risk. That lesson remained. Over time, Iran developed a military philosophy built around asymmetric warfare. Instead of competing directly with stronger opponents, it focused on finding cheaper methods to impose costs, fast boats, missiles, mines, coastal defenses, drones, different weapons, same idea, make intervention expensive. The part most people miss is that this strategy is not really about boats. It is about decision making. A missile can be intercepted, a boat can be destroyed, but a commander facing hundreds of possible threats must still make choices. Which target matters most? Which contact is dangerous? When should force be used? How much risk is acceptable? Every second matters. Every mistake matters. And in a narrow waterway filled with commercial traffic, the defender faces a difficult problem. The attacker only needs one opportunity. The defender must prevent all of them. This is why the Strait of Hormuz has become more than a geographic location. It has become a test. A test between traditional military power and asymmetric strategy. Between expensive platforms and inexpensive disruption. Between controlling territory and controlling uncertainty. Because everyone looking at the strait sees the same image: ships, boats, missiles, navies. But the real battlefield is hidden underneath. It is inside command centers, inside economic forecasts, inside the calculations of military planners, deciding how much power is enough. And the biggest question remains unanswered: if a small fleet can force the world's most powerful navy to constantly react. Is the future of naval warfare still about owning the biggest weapons? Or is it about controlling the decisions those weapons create? Everyone thinks this battle is about boats and warships. But the real battle is about controlling decisions under uncertainty. Because the Strait of Hormuz is not important simply because ships pass through it. It is important because every military commander, every shipping company, and every government must constantly make choices inside a dangerous, and that is where asymmetric warfare becomes powerful. The small boat is only the visible piece. The invisible weapon is the question it creates. Is the threat real? Is it large enough to respond? Is the cost of ignoring it greater than the cost of fighting it? Modern warfare increasingly happens inside these calculations. The side that controls the enemy's decisions can sometimes achieve strategic effects without winning a traditional battle. Look inside a naval command center. The room is dark. Screens cover the walls. Radar tracks move across digital maps. Every contact represents a decision. Most are harmless. Some may not be. And the problem is not seeing a threat. The problem is knowing which threat matters. This changes everything. Because technology has created a battlefield where information moves faster than human judgment. A modern destroyer may have incredible sensors, advanced radar, electronic warfare systems, missile defenses, but no system removes uncertainty completely. It only manages it. The attacker understands a cheap platform does not need to defeat a powerful ship directly. It only needs to create enough complexity that the defender must spend enormous resources staying prepared. The cost imbalance becomes the strategy. This is the hidden logic behind asymmetric warfare. A traditional military equation asks, how much damage can this weapon cause? But an asymmetric strategist asks a different question. How much attention can this weapon demand? That is the shift. The missile is not only valuable because it can hit a target. It is valuable because it forces radar systems to watch. It forces ships to change position. It forces commanders to prepare. It consumes time. It consumes money. It consumes mental bandwidth. The weapon becomes a tool for creating pressure. And this is why geography matters so much. A weapon in open ocean is different from the same weapon inside a narrow choke point. The Strait of Hormuz compresses space, distance disappears, reaction time shrinks, traffic density increases. Commercial ships operate near military forces. Every decision becomes more complicated. A commander in the Pacific may have thousands of miles of maneuver space. A commander in the Strait of Hormuz has geography working against them. The water itself becomes part of the battlefield. But here is the bigger contradiction. The United States has overwhelming conventional advantages, more advanced ships, more aircraft, more intelligence capabilities, more global military experience. So why would a smaller power choose a strategy built around small boats? Because the goal is not to defeat American power. The goal is to avoid fighting American power on American terms. This is the fundamental principle. A weaker force does not ask, how do I become stronger than my opponent? It asks, how do I make my opponent's strength less useful? That question has shaped military strategy for centuries. And today, technology has made it even more powerful. The same logic appears far beyond the Persian Gulf. A drone costing thousands of dollars can force a missile defense system costing millions of dollars to respond. A cyber operation can disrupt infrastructure without a single aircraft entering enemy airspace. A submarine can create uncertainty far beyond the area it physically occupies. The battlefield is expanding. The most important weapons are no longer always the ones that destroy. Sometimes they are the ones that force reaction. This is where economics enters the story. Because the Strait of Hormuz is not only a military problem, it is an energy problem, a security problem, a global economic problem. A map of the world's energy network reveals something important. The flow of oil and natural gas depends on vulnerable points, choke points, port shipping lanes. Infrastructure. A conflict in one narrow waterway can influence markets thousands of miles away. A refinery in Asia does not care which country fired the first shot. It only cares whether supply arrives. The bigger picture is that modern warfare is no longer separated from economics. The battlefield and the marketplace have become connected. This creates another strategic contradiction. A country may not need to physically control global energy routes to influence them. It only needs to increase uncertainty around them. Markets react to fear before they react to reality. Insurance prices rise, shipping schedules change. Companies adjust. Governments reconsider energy policies. A military confrontation becomes an economic event. An economic event becomes a political event. And eventually, the battlefield reaches people who never see a warship. But technology is changing the balance again, because the same systems that make small boats dangerous also make them easier to find. Satellites can monitor movement. Drones can provide surveillance. Artificial intelligence can help analyze patterns. Networked sensors can connect information faster than ever before. The attacker gains complexity. The defender gains visibility. The future battlefield becomes a race between concealment and detection, between surprise and information, between quantity and precision. The lesson here is that no weapon exists alone. A fast boat is not powerful by itself. A missile is not powerful by itself. A satellite is not powerful by itself. Power comes from the system surrounding the weapon. The real question is, can the system survive? Can it communicate? Can it resupply? Can it adapt after the enemy changes tactics? This is why modern military competition is increasingly about ecosystems, not individual weapons. Ivrion sees the ships. Few people see the supply chains behind them. Ivrion sees the aircraft. Few people see the industrial base producing spare parts. Ivrion sees the missile launch. Few people see the intelligence network that created the targeting information. The invisible battlefield is where modern wars are often decided: production, logistics, information, political endurance, public confidence, the ability to continue operating after the first attack. For Iran, the fast boat strategy represents a way to transform geography into military value. For the United States, maintaining freedom of navigation represents something larger than protecting individual ships. It represents maintaining a global system. That is why the Strait of Hormuz matters. The conflict is not simply between boats and warships. It is between two different ideas of power. One side emphasizes technological superiority and global reach. The other emphasizes uncertainty, proximity, and cost imposition. Neither strategy exists in isolation. Both continue adapting. And this may be the most important lesson. The future of warfare may not belong only to the country with the strongest weapon. It may belong to the country that understands systems better, because every advantage creates a new vulnerability. A larger ship creates a larger target. A more expensive system creates a higher cost of failure. A more connected battlefield creates more power creates opportunity, but power also creates responsibility. So the question is no longer who has the biggest navy. The real question is who can control the battlefield when uncertainty itself becomes the weapon. The Strait of Hormuz shows a possibility that may define future conflicts. Wars may not always be decided by the moment when one side destroys the other. They may be decided by who can force the opponent to spend more, react faster, and operate under greater pressure. Because in the next generation of warfare, the most dangerous weapon may not be the one that hits hardest. It may be the one that makes everyone hesitate. Do you think future wars will be won by superior weapons or by superior strategies that make those weapons matter less?